Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Fulbright U.S. Student Program here at USC. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world. We are here in VKC at USC, and my name is Katie Calvert. I'm one of the advisors here in the Office of Academic and International Fellowships, and I am joined by the Director of the Office of AIF, Nusha Malik, as well as Lee Rivers, who is an Assistant Outreach Manager for IIE, which is for the Institute for International Education. Lee is going to be taking over the majority of the stage here, talking to you about the Fulbright U.S. Student Program. But this is new for us, starting a Google Hangout, so hope it runs smoothly. You should see a green box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen that says Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout, I'll be checking that throughout the presentation. You're free to ask Lee or ourselves any questions about the U.S. Student Program. And other than that, I hope you enjoy. This presentation should be about 45 minutes to an hour or so. We have some students here with us live in VKC, so we're really excited. Hope this works, and I'm going to give Lee the stage.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. How you guys doing?
Good.
Excellent. This is a pretty good crowd for summer, actually. So I take it you guys are all locals, or at least taking courses this summer? Okay, cool. Well, I guess before we get going, what I'd like to do is just get a feel for who's in the room. And so if we could go around and just do introductions, I'd like to hear your name, what your field of study is, which country you may be interested in, and what else do I want? Sorry, I got on a plane at like 4 this morning. And then your class, which class you are, if you're a graduate student, if you're an undergraduate student, freshman, sophomore, etc. So those 4 things: name, class, what I say, field of study, and which country you're interested in. And let's start over here.
My name is Carnessa. I'm going to be senior in the fall. I'm a philosophy, politics, and law major, and minoring in Spanish and international relations. And I'm interested in studying in the UK.
Excellent. Great to have you.
I'm Ramsa. I'm a junior. I'm majoring in narrative studies with a double minor in Spanish and nonprofit. I'm not quite sure which country I'm interested in, but the UK sounds pretty interesting.
Excellent. Nice to meet you.
I'm August. I'm a creative writing, cognitive science double major, and a screenwriting minor, senior. And I don't really know what country. I mean, Brazil sounds pretty cool.
Very good. Great to meet you. Good to have you. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Lily. I'm a junior. I'm going to be, or my major is in humanities. And the country I'm interested in, maybe China or Indonesia.
Perfect. And for those that just walked in, we're just introducing ourselves. People are just letting us know what their name is, which class they're in, which study they're currently taking, and then what country they may be interested in.
Ready, but my name is Jay Ettinger. I'm a senior this year, studying business administration, and not specific which country, but I'm interested in Southeast Asia and South America.
Cool. I'm Eric. I'm going to be a senior. I'm a double major in English and philosophy, minor in cinematic arts. I'm just here to get more information, and I don't really know yet what country I'm interested in.
Yes, sir.
My name is Parth, and my major is manufacturing. I'm a graduate student, and I'm also here to get some more information. So I'm Nick. I'm going to be a senior in the fall. I'm a theatrical scene design and game design double major. Study, right, and then country, specifically England, but anywhere in the UK.
Did you say game design?
I did.
They have that?
They do.
That's awesome. Nice to have you. Yes.
I'm Harleen. I'm going to be a senior / graduate student next year. So undergrad in health promotion, and then master's in global medicine. And then I'm not really sure what's country yet.
My name's Sam.
Sorry, so you guys move up so we can kind of prepare you about. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Whoa, not that good.
I'm a grad student, a master's program of petroleum engineering.
I'm interested in Canada, Australia, Indonesia.
I'm Amanda. I'm a senior studying year studying international relations, specifically peace and conflict studies, and I'm looking at studying in Israel.
I'm Gideon, senior in creative studies, and I'm interested in China.
I'm Nikki. I'm a senior studying health promotion and disease prevention, and I'm getting my master's in public medicine, and I'm interested in India.
Good morning. I'm Grace. I'm going to be a senior in the health and humanity major and a global health and psychology major. And I'm not sure which one. Just give a
So my name is Alan. I'm a senior art history major, and I'm interested in either England or
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm going to be a senior in application
I'm Doyle. I'm a comparative literature major. I'm interested in the EU Fulbright program.
My name is Brandon. I'm a Master's Public Policy student at Seoul Price School of Public Policy, and my focus would be on economic analysis and comparative political and policy studies in Dublin, Ireland.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Great to meet you, Brandon.
My name is Red. I am a graduate student in public policy and urban planning, and I'm interested in studying the countries from the Balkan conflict. Yes.
Great to meet you.
Hi, I'm Whitney Sherman. I'm actually a study abroad advisor here at USC. I'm just here to get some more information and sort of guide students to the right.
Thanks for being here with me. There were a couple people that came in a little bit later. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Mara. I'll be an upcoming senior. I'm currently double majoring in animation and East Asian area studies, but I have an emphasis on Korean studies, so I would like to study.
You guys have the coolest majors here. Was there anyone else that walked in that didn't have privilege of your reason?
Yes, I'm Jane. My name is Jane. So I am originally from China, and I'm studying the peace program here as graduate student.
Good to have. Others? Somebody else? Yes.
So I'm Claire. I'm going to be a senior, and I'm studying creative writing. I hope to do the English teaching.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you guys. As I said before, this is a great looking group, and this is a good number of people. We might need more chairs, actually. So let's go ahead and dive in, I guess. I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Lee Rivers. I'm the Assistant Manager of Outreach and Special Projects. What that means is I manage our outreach calendar. So do events like this. We also go to a lot of conferences, a lot of just events that happen throughout the course of the year. This is sort of promoting the program, the Fulbright program, as well as the Gilman Scholarship Program, which is for undergraduate students and Warren Awards. Obviously, today I'm going to be focusing on the Fulbright program. But a little bit about my background. I'm originally from Manhattan, Kansas. Went to Kansas State University. We actually played USC a number of years ago, twice. We have to win both of those games. But that's a past. I went to Kansas State University. There I studied kinesiology. I was doing physical therapy for a number of years, but I had a couple international experiences. I was a Gilman Scholar. I studied in Australia, and that was a life-changing experience for me. I was taking courses, but at the same time, just really being able to kind of see what Australia was about by being able to travel around the country. And I came back and I started working in the study abroad office at Kansas State, and started sort of looking at other professions or careers where I could be on a college campus or be interacting with college students, kind of telling them that there's money that's out there and there's programs that are out there that kind of support them and their dreams. And so a year after that, I was blessed to get a Fulbright Hays grant where I traveled with a group of U.S. students where we were working collaboratively with students at the University of Dar es Salaam. So we traveled to Tanzania. We were there for about 9 weeks studying Swahili language, culture, and architecture. So very different than my Chinese background, but a wonderful experience, and just sort of pushed me more towards international education. So I ended up getting a master's in higher ed, focusing on international education, and have been with IIE for the past 6 years, which is crazy to say because time moves really fast. So that's a little bit about me, just so you get an idea of where I'm coming from. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about the Fulbright. Am I speaking loud enough? Is this okay?
Should we do a check, just to, let the audience know if they can't hear me?
I'm just not quite
You
sure.
probably can't hear me from back here. So.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to type it in, but those who are watching, wherever you are in the world, if you could let us know. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in. I don't see any yet, but can you hear us? Please let us know. Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the Fulbright program before I dive into all the particulars. So the Fulbright program, it's sponsored by the U.S. Department of State, the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, and then it's administered by the organization that I work for, which is the Institute of International Education. The Fulbright program has been around for a long time, since the 1940s. And I think the most important thing that I want you to pay attention to on this slide is going to be the goal of the program, which is to foster mutual understanding between individuals here in the United States and individuals abroad. So the Fulbright program, while it has academic roots, it's not strictly academic. What we're looking for are individuals that are going to go abroad and be really good cultural ambassadors, people that are not only going to represent themselves well, but represent the United States well. The Fulbright program, we work with over 155 different countries, as you can see here. So I like to look at the program not as one program, but as 155 different programs, because every country has different preferences, different expectations, different policies that sort of guide it. So we work in collaboration and partnership with countries abroad. In about 50 countries, we have what we call a Fulbright Commission. And so they work full-time in running the Fulbright program there in their countries. And then those other 100+ countries that don't have a Fulbright Commission, the U.S. embassies in those countries actually operate and run the program. Does that make sense? So we work in close partnership with countries abroad. Something else that I think is worth pointing out is that this isn't the only opportunity that sort of falls underneath this Fulbright umbrella. I like to look at Fulbright as a four-way street, meaning that we have students, U.S. students like yourselves, that are looking at going abroad to do research, to study, to do the English teaching assistantships. But we also have scholars, so those that have a PhD or years of experience that are going abroad to teach and do research. And sort of in that same vein, on the flip side, we have foreign students that are coming here to the United States to work on their masters, their PhDs, many of which are here on your campus at USC. And then we have foreign scholars that are coming here to teach and do research in the United States. So it's a huge exchange program. As you see, there's 8,000 people that are sort of involved in this exchange process each year. The Fulbright program has over 310,000 alumni. So if you go on and you win the award, you really do kind of become part of this elite network. I say elite, but not elitist network of Fulbrighters that have gone on to do some pretty remarkable things. Fulbrighters have gone on to be heads of state, heads of government, Nobel Prize winners, groundbreaking scientists, world-renowned artists, you name it. And also people that have come back and really impacted their communities. As I said before, there's a focus on mutual understanding, how you can apply that while you're abroad, but also how you apply that when you return here to the United States. We want to hear about how you're going to do that in your application. So does that make sense? You guys get a better idea of kind of what Fulbright is all about. It's not a self-serving, self-focused type of program. It's about you getting into the communities and they getting to know you and you getting to know them. So that's a little bit of history about the program. Let's cover the eligibility. First is that you have to be a U.S. citizen in order to apply for the program. Second is that you can't have a bachelor's degree at the time of application. Third is that bachelor's degree or equivalent by the start of the grant, I'm sorry. And then you can't have a PhD during the time of application, during the time that you apply. So none of you guys have PhDs, so you don't have to worry about that. But what I like to tell people is that anytime during those two events, getting your bachelor's degree and getting your PhD, anytime during that period of time, you're eligible to apply for the Fulbright program. So you may not be enrolled in an institute of higher ed. You may be in the workforce. You may have been working for the last 3 or 4 years or 5 years. You're still eligible to apply for the Fulbright program. I think our oldest Fulbrighter is like 67 years old. So if you guys want to wait 20, 30 years before you apply, that's totally your call. But as long as you don't have that PhD behind your name, in front of your name, the doctor in front of your name, then you're eligible to apply. So we offer grants to graduating seniors, recent graduates, graduate students, early career professionals, scientists, you name it. All fields of studies, all disciplines are welcome to apply for the Fulbright program. Somebody in here was saying that they're in creative writing. Claire, wasn't it? You're in creative writing. So you may choose to do a Fulbright abroad where you're working on your next novel. Somebody else that's coming from a public health background may be working on AIDS or HIV related like public health type projects in sub-Saharan Africa for your project. If you are a filmmaker, you could be working on a documentary while abroad. If you're looking at doing a 1-year master's program, you could be taking courses while you're abroad. It's really up to you what you want to do. But as I said before, it's a very country-driven program. And so it's wise that you go on our website, look under the country summaries page to find out if you're eligible to apply for that specific country and do the project that you're proposing to do. So just so you guys get an idea of the timeline. Right now you're just in the gathering information process. You're looking into where it is you want to go and what it is you want to do. Sort of based off what everybody said here, it looks like you guys are going to be representing sort of the entire world. Some people are interested in going to the UK. I heard Australia mentioned. Europe was mentioned several times. Senegal, Ireland. So Brazil, China. And so it looks like you guys are going to be going all over the place, which is really exciting. But as I said, right now what you need to do is make sure that that country is going to align with the goals that you have. Our deadline, before I talk about that, since all of you guys are currently enrolled here at USC, there's a process that you're going to have to go through here on this campus, and an interview process. And basically the point of this, every campus is a little bit different, but the goal is to make sure that all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted before you submit your applications IIE on October 14th. Risha, would you like to talk a little bit about the process here?
Yeah, our campus deadline is September 15th, and what we do is schedule separate interviews for academic applicants, creative arts applicants, and English teaching assistant applicants. And so we're in part doing what IIE requests of us, and that is to evaluate your application and make sure everything is in order. We also take it as an opportunity to provide some final feedback on your application, although really like to work with you much earlier during the summer to get it to an excellent state. And then you will submit all of your final documents to us, and we'll ensure that your application is forwarded to IIE by their national deadline. So September 15th, a big day.
And what I've heard a lot of, successful applicants do is they set false deadlines for themselves. So let's say, September 15th, was it? Is the deadline for USC. Maybe you set a goal for yourself by July 15th, you want to have the statement of purpose done. Maybe by, a couple weeks later, you want to have your personal statement taken care of. All of these things And I'll show you the different components of the application in a little bit. But I encourage you to set deadlines for yourself. That way you're making sure you're not waiting until the last minute to get everything done, because it can be a little bit cumbersome. It's a big application. It's sort of a long process. And so you want to make sure you're taking the time to get all of your questions answered and really make sure that you're submitting the strongest application possible, something that really represents who you are as an individual and what it is that you're proposing to do on the project. So moving along here, our deadline is the 14th of October. What's going to happen after that point is that your application is going to be reviewed here nationally. It's going to be reviewed at one of our IIE offices. So we have offices, our headquarters is in New York, we have an office in DC, Chicago, Denver. I'm based out of our Houston office in San Francisco. And so at all of these different sites, we're going to be having faculty that are regional experts for the countries that you're applying to. They're going to be coming in and reviewing your applications. This is our National Screening Committee meetings. And so let's say you're interested in going to Brazil. Somebody mentioned Brazil here. Okay, so let's say you're interested in going to Brazil and you're interested in doing the research study grant. Well, your application is going to be compared with others that are going to Brazil and doing that specific type of grant. If you're looking at doing the English teaching assistantship in, I don't know, South Africa, for instance, your application is going to be reviewed with other people that are applying for the ETAs in South Africa. So you don't have to worry about being compared with somebody that's going to Argentina or to Egypt, doing something totally different than what you're looking at and applying for. You're going to be compared with like applicants. So they're gathering those 60 to 80 applications, depending on what the numbers are for that country. They're reviewing those applications a couple weeks before they meet at the different sites. And then once they're at the sites, they're making recommendations based off guidelines that are provided by IIE and the Fulbright program. And so they're recommending about twice as many applicants as there are grants available per country. So if we're to use Argentina as an example, I'm going to make up some numbers here. Let's say you're looking at doing a research study grant in Argentina, and there are 10 grants available. We're probably going to be recommending about 20 people, applications to be sent on to Argentina for that second wave of review that happens, between the spring, basically, between January to May. And so what you need to keep in mind is that your application is being viewed by two different audiences. One here in the United States, and then the other in the country that you're looking at applying to. And so it's wise to keep in mind, what's happening in that country. What are some hot topics in that country? What are things that they would be interested in posting somebody in their country to do? And if you check out the country summaries, as you should, you may kind of be clued into certain disciplines that the country is looking for, or certain qualities that they're looking for in their applicants. Does that make sense? So that process, as you can see, takes a while. You're going to hear back from IIE in late January whether you were recommended or not. Everybody will get some sort of notification via email whether you were recommended or not. If you were recommended, don't pack your bags quite yet because you have a second wave review. But if you weren't recommended, don't be discouraged. There's a lot of Fulbrighters out there. Many of our Fulbright alumni ambassadors actually didn't receive it the first time around, but were able to come back the second time and be a little bit more focused. They had more experience that they could add to their application. They boosted their language skills, those sorts of things, and got it the second time around or the third time around. So if at first you don't succeed, there you go.
Lee, I'm just going to do a quick check and see if anybody has any questions. Right now I'm just seeing that they can hear us. Let me see. Again, we're encouraging you, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the box and we'll ask Lee so you get the answer right here and now. In the meantime, we're going to continue with the presentation.
Okay, so there are two different types of grants in the Fulbright program. I didn't even ask, how familiar are you guys with the program? So this is like their first information session that they've sat in, and this is sort of like the first entry and getting information. Okay, so a lot of you guys. Who's maybe gone through the process in the past or has like investigated it on a deeper level? You guys. So let me talk a little bit about the differences between these two types of grants that you can apply for. One of the first decisions that you're going to be making is what type of grant do you want to apply for. You have to choose one or the other. You can't pick both. So there's the research and study grants and the English teaching assistantships. I like to look at the research and study grants as sort of a build your own adventure, right? This is where you're telling us exactly where it is you want to go, what it is you want to do, why it is you want to go there, and just sort of making this case as to why that's the perfect country for you to go at this time in your life. How Fulbright's going to be the perfect stepping stone for you moving on in the future. And so it's an opportunity for you to really just kind of talk about where you're passionate about going and what you're passionate about doing. I've given some examples before. Filmmakers can work on a documentary. Those in the creative and performing arts may be taking those skills and applying them into that international context, or be going to like a conservatory and developing their, further honing their skills. It's really up to you. So you see we have over 140 different countries that participate in this type of grant. And these grants last 8 to 12 months in length. Kind of varies by country. So that's the first type. The second type are these English teaching assistantships. And this is the fastest growing sector of the Fulbright program. When I started working with Fulbright 4 years ago, there were about 32 different countries that participated in ETAs. And now you see that there's over 70. So it's growing fast, and you see sort of more of an equality between the number of grants offered for ETAs and research study grants. And that wasn't always the case. So this is kind of where the puck is moving with the Fulbright program. You have countries like Malaysia, Brazil, that are, in Germany for that matter, that are sending 75 to over 100 English teaching assistantships each year, or are awarding that many ETAs each year. So it's pretty exciting. But basically what you're doing with the ETA is you're helping non-native English speakers learn the English language, as well as learn about U.S. culture. And so you're an assistant teacher in the classroom. You're not the full-on professor. And so you are providing that U.S. perspective in the classroom. You may be working with K through 12 students, or in some cases, depending on the country, you could be working with college students or people at the university level. It really depends on the country. Something to keep in mind with the ETAs is that those placements are being made by the country, by the Fulbright commissions and the U.S. embassies in that country. And so you're choosing the country it is you want to go to, and then they're placing you within the country. So you could be in a very rural area, or you may be in an urban area. So that's why we're hoping that the people that apply for ETAs are flexible and they're individuals that can adapt regardless of where you find yourself. Any questions about either of these two different types of grants? Yes, sir.
My understanding was under the research study grant that it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to be a degree-seeking program, right? Because it's part of the study. So you just can take courses, but you don't have to seek a master's or whatever.
That is correct. That's absolutely correct. So you may be taking courses, but at the same time doing field research. Combining a couple of different passions that you have. Let me throw an example at you. There was a Fulbrighter, Alexis Tucker, that went to France for her Fulbright project. And she had an interest in a lot of different fields. She had a background in political science. She had an interest in filmmaking, as well as French history. And what she did with her project, she went during a time when there were a lot of riots and revolts happening in France. And she was kind of studying why or what relation the hip-hop culture had to French politics. And she was going around to different concerts, interviewing well-renowned artists there in that country, as well as interviewing people that were very involved in the political scene there in France. And she was filming all of this. So she did a documentary about that. But at the same time, she had a background in dance, so she was teaching hip-hop dance lessons on the side. So, you know, I understand that you guys, your education, your degree, may not necessarily, you know, link up perfectly with what you're passionate about, what you do outside of the classroom setting. But Fulbright's an opportunity where you can take those 2 interests or 3 interests and combine them into one project. Does that make sense?
We have another question. Where can we find the list of the 140 eligible countries?
Sure. What you're going to want to do is go on the website, and right there at the top, you're going to be able to click on the country summaries button, or the countries.
That's it,
link.
countries, yeah.
It's pretty straightforward if you go to our website, us.fulbrightonline.org. And you'll see an entire list of all the countries. We'll have there's a map on there that if you scroll over the top of it, you should be able to kind of see how many grants are being offered in that country as well. So the website's going to be your best friend in that process. Other questions, Ms. Sam?
So if we apply for a research study grant, we choose one country.
Correct. There are multi-country programs that are out there. There are multi-country opportunities that are out there. But the challenge with that is that if you apply for 3 countries and you don't get accepted to one, then your application is going to be dismissed. If you apply 2 and you don't get into one, your application is dismissed. And so you kind of have that double jeopardy thing going on. So it's a little bit more challenging, and I typically only encourage those that are kind of doing research at the PhD level to apply for multi-country programs if it's necessary. Keep in mind, you're only going to be in country for 8 to 12 months. That first month to 2, you're going to be acclimating to your new environment, you know, getting your housing, you know, partnering with your affiliate there in country, and just kind of getting the lay of the land. And so you really don't have tons of time in country to kind of figure things out. So, good question. There are multi-country opportunities. You can go on the website to get more information. But I'd say 95% of our applicants are applying to one country. Yes?
Can you talk about the limited experience in the host country? So the students studied abroad there.
Sure.
Probably
That is actually not true. So the question was about limited experience in the host country. What we mean by that, let me address the study abroad. If you studied abroad, who has studied abroad in Oregon? Or traveled abroad? Okay, so quite a few of you, and that's excellent, that's awesome. Study abroad doesn't count against you in any way in the application process. In fact, it's sort of seen as a feather in your cap, if you will. It's seen as a positive, because that may be the very reason why you're interested in going to a specific region or country, or why you're interested in going back abroad. Where we see the limited experience in the host country maybe start working against you is at the graduate level, living abroad, you know, doing graduate work abroad, or just spending extensive time post-graduation, post-bachelor's degree in a country that you're looking at applying to. So that's where it can start working against you. Like let's say you live in Germany for 1.5 years after you graduate, you're just working there, maybe you're going to school there doing research. That would start working against somebody as opposed to somebody their junior year went for a semester to Germany. And it doesn't work against you if you grew up abroad. In most cases, you probably didn't have control over where your parents lived, right? So that doesn't count against you either. Another area where this might start working against you is if you have dual citizenship in a country. And once again, if you go to the country summaries page, you can get more information about dual citizenship and if that disqualifies you for that particular country. Great question. Do you have a question as well?
Yes. So it's an 8 to 12 for the research study grant. It's an 8 to 12 month duration. Is the expectation that your project is completed within that time frame, or does this sort of become a foundational piece for work for ongoing work?
It could very well become like a foundational piece that you continue to build on in the future. So with the Fulbright program, there is no final project, if you will. We're not asking you to send in a final paper to us or take your research and submit it to us. Any work that you do abroad is your own, right? We'd like you to tell us about it. That way we can promote you and promote the program and that sort of thing. But the work you do is your own. We do have a couple of surveys that we send Fulbrighters during their time abroad. One is like a mid Fulbright experience evaluation. It probably has a more appropriate name. I can't think of it. It's like a mid-year evaluation, where we're basically just trying to get a feel for how things are going. And then once you're about to leave the country, we have a final exit survey as well. So those are the only things that we require. Outside of that, your work is your own. Does that field your question? Is that an answer? Sure. So a lot of people use their Fulbright experience as a springboard for graduate school or their PhD or just their work. Yes.
To kind of follow up on that, do most people usually, just kind of generally speaking, create like thesis type papers, or are there different formats that people generally work with for what the product they create through the research?
I just think it kind of varies. It varies. I mean, we've worked with a lot of students here.
It really does vary. I mean, some students may take something like a honors thesis that they've been working on, and they want to expand on that and bring in the global perspective that they didn't have while they were at the university. But not always. It doesn't have to be that way. I think just generally speaking, you need to have a good academic foundation for the project that you want to pursue.
Other questions? Two great questions, by the way. Yes, sir.
For the English teaching citizenship, is there any sort of language requirements for different countries, or like past teaching experience or credentials?
Yeah, good question. Let me talk about language, because that's a really key. That's really central to what we're trying to accomplish with the Fulbright program. Remember, I said before the goal was mutual understanding. Well, it's tough to understand individuals if you can't speak at least on a hospitality level to individuals. And so I think with all countries, we're expecting at least a hospitality level of language skill. And that can be acquired. You saw how long the process was when the timeline was up there. Even if you don't have language skills, in that year and a half that it takes as you're sort of waiting before you go abroad, that's plenty of time to be able to take a course or maybe take informal lessons from someone at a community center here, or you have time to at least get that basic level of language skill. Language is definitely going to be determined by the type of project that you're proposing to do. If you're proposing to do a project that involves you getting in the community and speaking with individuals, community leaders, or otherwise, or just common everyday folks, then the expectation in interview setting, the expectation is going to be a lot higher that your language skills are stronger. But if you're doing an English teaching assistantship and you're going to Malaysia or somewhere where the language may not be taught here in the United States as predominantly as Spanish or French or German, then the expectation isn't going to be so high. But with the language, once again, check the country summaries page, and it'll give you a little more insight into what that country is looking for. I wouldn't ever let that be something that deters you from applying for the Fulbright program or applying to a specific country. Just know that you may have to further develop your language skills, and it's ultimately going to depend on what you're proposing to do. There's a lot of labs that you can go to abroad where English is the predominant language spoken. There's a lot of courses that you can take where English is, where courses are taught in English. So just have to do a little bit of research on your end. And I'll talk about teaching experience here a little bit. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the previous applicant that was interested in filmmaking. Did they do the Nat Geo one? So if someone was interested in filmmaking, would you advise them to limit themselves to that particular Fulbright fellowship, or look at other ones too?
She didn't, because the Nat Geo is so new. I think that may be our next slide, actually.
The numbers are really competitive for the Nat Geo.
A little ways, I think.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. She didn't apply for that because it was so new. But the numbers are extremely competitive for Nat Geo. I think there were 800 people that applied, over 800 people that applied for 5 grants. So it's pretty competitive. But let me talk a little bit about These are great questions, by the way. I appreciate them. Let me talk a little bit about the benefits, what's new with the program. I know our time is pretty limited here, and I'll be willing to stick around if you guys have other questions as well. So I'll talk to you for like 20 minutes, and you don't even know what you get. So the grant benefits, first is round-trip airfare. Second is a monthly stipend, which is dependent upon the country that you're going to. This is based off cost of living in that country. So the cost of living in France is probably going to be a little bit more than the cost of living in Nicaragua or Guatemala. I'm naming countries that I don't think we have programs. But you get the idea. So it's based off cost of living. It's going to be enough money where you're able to travel around that country, see the regional differences, be able to pay for your food, pay for your lodging, pay for those necessities that you have. But it's not so much that you're going to come back here to the U.S. like independently wealthy. So sorry. You're going to have to budget your money. We don't ask you to supply us with a budget, but just as you guys should have a budget here in the U.S., you should have a budget that you're working with while abroad. Something worth noting is that the money that you receive from the Fulbright program is taxable. So that's something that keep in the back of your mind that when you return, the IRS, the government is going to want their piece. So just keep that in mind. Maybe set a couple dollars aside as you're moving along through the process. Some other benefits: accident and sickness insurance, and then you see a whole list of other possible benefits, which could include tuition costs, may include language training, language lessons, could include these enrichment seminars, which are really cool. This is an opportunity to gather with other Fulbrighters that are in the same region as you. So if you're looking at going to Brazil, maybe this is an opportunity where you're gathering for a week, for 4 or 5 days with other Fulbrighters that are in Brazil and Argentina and Chile. It's an opportunity for you to share what you've been working on and doing. And so I said before, as a Fulbrighter, you become part of this elite network. Well, this is an opportunity where you get to meet some of the other Fulbrighters that are doing some pretty exciting work in your field or in fields outside of what you're choosing to study. So there's a lot of great benefits with the Fulbright program. I'll keep moving along. Okay. What's new with the program? I'll include your question right now. Actually, I'll do it right now, and then we'll talk about what's new.
If the research that you're doing requires travel in country, will that be something that Fulbright will cover?
It may be. It may just be sort of included in your stipend, and you have to budget it and figure out how you want to do that. Okay, so what's new with the program? I'm not going to go through all of these, but I did want to just kind of throw this slide up there and just show you that Fulbright is a very dynamic program. Even though it's been around since the 1940s, there's always new opportunities that are being added, always new countries. We'll talk about the opportunity for the Fulbright Nat Geo opportunity here in a little bit, but you see that countries like Taiwan and Korea are now offering 2-year degrees. So traditionally grants are 8 to 12 months, but there are some countries where we're offering graduate study for 2 years, a little bit longer. And so that's worth looking into. This New Zealand grant is pretty interesting because it focuses on earthquakes and the impact of earthquakes. I guess being here in California, that's something that's pretty relevant to all of you guys. So yeah, if that's your area of interest, there's a grant specifically designed for those individuals. Then you see new opportunity in the Ivory Coast, and Uruguay is continuing to offer ETA grants. Some of the other grants that I'd like to point out here or mention on the next slide. First is some of our business-focused grants. Who was doing their business degree? Yes. So we do have countries that have grants specifically for individuals that are looking at doing an international business degree. And not only can you get the degree, but we provide you with an internship in an area that you're interested in. So those occur in Spain, Mexico. Australia has a business degree. There are STEM-focused grants, which are great. which I highly recommend if you're coming from the STEM fields to check that out. Grants focused on young journalists. There were a couple people that were in writing, creative writing, that may be drawn to these specific awards for to continue to hone your journalistic skills. And then the UK, I always like pointing this out, just because there's so many people that are interested in going to the UK. And it's set up a little bit differently than the rest of the other 154 countries. In the sense that the UK has partnerships with various institutions there in country. We have 42 different institutions that offer grants specifically to their university. And what you have to do, I look at it as two parallel paths. You have to apply for the Fulbright program, but at the same time apply for that university that it is you're looking at going to, looking at attending. And so with the UK, there are some campuses that get a lot of applicants. So like Oxford, you may see 50, 60 people applying for 1 or 2 grants. But there may be other institutions that only receive 4 or 5 applications for 1 or 2 grants. And so if you're a numbers person and you're doing a field of study that can be done at different universities, it doesn't have to necessarily be done at Oxford or one of the other popular institutions, then I encourage you to look at some of those other places. I'll just keep moving forward here.
Lee, also as an FYI, we have a series of questions coming up. Do you want to answer them now or
yeah,
a little bit?
Let's go through those.
You want to do some of them? Okay.
And I'd like to add that we have a copy of this presentation, and so we can always send it out if you weren't able to write down all the partnership and field-specific awards. And some of you were able to get the little chart that we have. Some of that information is available on there as well.
Sorry, I think I just cut to me, not. Hi, everyone. Sorry. Not seeing. I think that's our page. Okay, sorry. Let me just go back to this one. I may have I can connect us both up to the PowerPoint again, but for now, let's see. We have a couple questions. For research, are we allowed to intern, volunteer with a research institution in the country that we're interested in, or does it have to be completely individual project? So I think this is more of the civic engagement piece.
Sure.
Or are they asking if they could work?
Not for pay. I mean, the Fulbright takes care of that piece of it. There are people that do internships. They're not necessarily doing them for pay. They do volunteer work, maybe working at a non-governmental organization while abroad, something that is national to that host country. Yeah, we definitely encourage people to be engaged in that. Sure, if that's something they want to do.
Okay, and then as far as the National Geographic scholarship, the application is the process is the same. You apply through USC, the same September 15th deadline. There are a couple differences in what you need to turn in, but all that information is under the tips and components section of the Fulbright website.
And we will be having specific webinars for some of those special awards, for the Fulbright MTBU, for the Nat Geo Award, for the Public Policy Award. So what I recommend you do is go to our website and see when those webinars are going to be taking place and clock into those. We typically record our webinars as well, so if you're not able to view in live, then go back and check those out.
Okay, and the last question, I'm interested in a special grant, the Chilean Science Initiative Award. The Fulbright website says I have to contact the institution directly. How do I find eligible institutions?
What I recommend you do with that is get in touch with the area manager for that region. I'm not sure. 150 different programs, countries. I'm sort of a generalist here. So one of your best resources is going to be the area managers. They're employed by IIE. We get paid to help you guys, and so definitely make sure you're getting your questions answered before you submit your application. We'll have a slide on here, or you'll be given a slide that has their contact information. It can also be found on our website under contact at the bottom of every page. So those are the individuals that literally have their thumb on the pulse of what's going on in that specific country, and can field some of your country-specific questions.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So where were we? Nat
This
Geo.
one? Nat Geo?
I'm not going to talk a lot about Nat Geo.
Oh,
Basically,
was I
it's a
there?
really cool opportunity where National Geographic is partnered with Fulbright. I'm not even quite sure what this is going to look like because it launched last January, and we just have gone through that selection process of choosing our candidates. So I think after this year, we'll all have a better idea of what this looks like and what you can really do with it. I will tell you this: when I did a webinar with one of the directors from Nat Geo, he was saying that this award is sort of a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in the sense that it's an awesome opportunity. There's two powerhouses, Fulbright and Nat Geo, that are coming together and creating this great opportunity. But he said that half of his staff wanted to quit and apply for the award. So that's maybe where some of those 800 applications come from. It's a great opportunity, as I said. Plug into the webinar to get more details.
Next.
Okay, application components. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about every one of these. What I really want to spend a bit of time is talking about the essays, because this is going to be the most important part of your application. This is where we're going to get to know who you are, where it is you're going, what it is proposing to do, and why it is you have to go to that specific country. We don't have an interview process. We're not going to get on the phone with you and get to know you. We're not going to fly you to New York or to Houston and have an interview with you. Really, these essays are your interview in written form. And so the statement of grant purpose, sorry, it's super confusing.
It's in there somewhere. Oh, it's not in there at all.
Personal statement.
We'll hang out right here for a minute.
On components?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the statement of grant purpose, I'll talk about it first for the research and study grants. It's a maximum of 2 pages. So raise your hand if you've written a paper more than 2 pages. Right? Everybody has, and I think that's the biggest challenge with this, is getting all of your thoughts condensed into that 2-page maximum for the research and study grants. What we're looking for with this, and I'm just going to throw some questions at you guys that we're looking for you to answer. This is where you're answering the who, what, where, when, why, and how questions. For research study grants, we want to know why you're proposing to go to that specific country. What's drawing you to go to that country? What's innovative about the project that you're proposing to do or the research you're proposing to do in country? What's significant about it? What important contribution is your project going to make, not just to you, but to the community that you may be working with? What implications is it going to have once you return here to the United States? How are you planning on conducting the research? Do you have a timeline? Do you have an idea of what resources you're going to be needing there in country? We want you to talk about those things. Why does this project have to be conducted in this specific country? I think of a Fulbrighter named Siegfried, who did a project in Chile, and the reason he chose to go to Chile was because he was an astrophysicist, and apparently in Chile there is this observatory, this massive telescope. I'm sure there's a better, more proper name for it than that, but this massive telescope that can only be found there in that country. So that provided a strong justification as to why he had to go to that country. How is this project, or how is this work going to further impact you academically, professionally, personally? And then finally, how are you going to engage in the community in the host country that you're working in? And give us some ideas of how you're going to do that. So those are just some of the questions that you should be thinking about with that research and study statement of grant purpose. If you're looking at applying for like a 1-year master's degree, the curriculum is really going to drive what you're focused on. So you may not be working on a project, but we want to know, why are you choosing to go to this country? Why is taking this coursework? What are you planning on coming away with from this master's degree? How are you going to use it? And also describe, what it is that you're planning on doing outside of the classroom as well. And so if you're looking at doing that master's program, focusing on that, then you really want the curriculum to sort of drive why it is you're applying for the program, what it is you want to do.
Is there like an average or minimum GPA that like Fulbright usually have?
I don't know if there's an average. There is no minimum GPA that's required for the Fulbright program. If I was to guess, and don't ever quote me on this, I'd say 3.0 and up. But I honestly, it's not something we track.
Yeah, I think in our experience, probably 3.0. Although I've seen one or two under 3.0, but generally above 3.0. I think it's one of the indicators of your academic qualifications for the grant. So sometimes because you may have a higher GPA, you may also be more academically prepared. But it really is open. There Absolutely. Is no minimum.
Absolutely. I mean, we're looking for creativity with the Fulbright program. I understand that not everybody is, strong academically, but maybe it will perform well in other ways. And so we're looking at the applications holistically.
And you're doing it's a filmmaking project.
That's why I'm interested.
Yeah, and I think the supplementary materials in that case are very important. I think that's one of the first things that are viewed and evaluated for your qualifications.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned earlier that if you apply to multiple countries, and you have to get accepted by all of them to move on to the next round. Is it the same way with special programs?
So Nat Geo is different than everything else out there. I would say generally speaking, yes, because your application is going to be going to everywhere that you apply. So I think that does. I think that is true.
Okay, so you say just apply to one if you're going to put in a special program.
Maybe outside of Nat Geo, I'd say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what we're going to do with Nat Geo this year and how many countries you can apply to. But we'll stick with one.
We're just a couple minutes from noon, so if you'd like to conclude your presentation, and then I think we can take a few questions, if that's all right.
Let me talk a little bit about the personal statement and how that differs from the statement of grant purpose. But before I do that, I didn't talk about ETAs. ETA, statement of grant purpose, is only one page. And you're focusing on what it is you're going to be able to bring to the classroom environment. We don't require that you are a former teacher or have extensive experience teaching in a formal setting. But what do you have, what involvements, or what have you been involved in maybe that could transfer, those skills that you have would translate into being an effective teacher in the classroom? Maybe you were a summer camp counselor or a coach in the past, or you volunteered at the Boys and Girls Club, or you're an after-school tutor. All of those things look really good for those that are applying for an ETA. So some of the questions you want to ask are addressed. Why are you applying for the ETA? What are you going to bring to the classroom that's going to enrich the learning environment? What specific qualifications or skills do you have that will serve you well or serve the students well in that classroom setting? And what specific ideas do you have for engaging the students and helping them learn English? So those are just a couple of the questions that you should address. With the personal statement, I like to look at this as an intellectual biography that's in narrative form. It's one page in length, and this is really where you're able to kind of key in on some of those things about yourself that the readers would not know otherwise. So your personal history, a family background, really talking about what makes you tick, what makes you you. And no two stories, no two personal statements are going to look the same. So if I can throw out one last example before I kind of have some closing remarks, and then we can take some questions. So there was a Fulbrighter, her name was Misha Granado, and she wanted to do a project where she was traveling to Barbados, and she was in the public health field. She was studying why women that were diagnosed with breast cancer were refusing treatment even though it was readily available in the country. It's a pretty interesting project. And what she did was she sort of painted this bridge, or built this bridge of where she was currently at, applying for the Fulbright program, to where it was she wanted to go, applying, to be this fellow in Barbados. And what she did was she thought about all of the events, all the activities that she had participated in sort of leading up to that point. She talked about how she had a bachelor's degree in psychology. She went on to get a master's in public health. She talked about how she worked with AmeriCorps for a number of years. She was a volunteer there. She talked about how she did some counseling with women and children that were going through tough periods in their lives and how that was an impactful experience for her. And she tied in family as well. Her family was originally from the Caribbean, and so this was, sort of a way to be able to kind of get back in touch with her roots, if you will, from that perspective. She talked about how her mom was a breast cancer survivor, and that's where she first became interested in this topic of cancer, breast cancer specifically, and in Barbadian women. And so I think if you look at each of those events, activities, isolated, they may not justify as to why she was going to Barbados to do that project, but once she started sort of stitching them together, sort of building this bridge, if you will, it was a strong justification, it provided a very strong justification as to why she was the ideal candidate to go to Barbados and study, why Barbadian women that were diagnosed with breast cancer were refusing treatment. And what she did for her affiliation was she partnered with somebody that was in the Ministry of Health there, somebody that would be able to give her access to communities that, as an American hopping on a plane flying to Barbados, she wouldn't have access to otherwise. And so that ministry, the Minister of Health there, gave her access to these communities and also gave her credibility and sort of helped build trust in the community of people that she was working with. So that's just an example of how you can take just your background and sort of weave it together to compose a strong statement of purpose and personal statement. So I'm sorry I wasn't able to cover everything for all of your questions. Fulbright it's an awesome opportunity that gives you an opportunity, I think, unlike a lot of our disciplines or fields of study that are very lockstep. It gives you an opportunity to be creative and sort of, build your own adventure, as I said before. And it's an opportunity where you have a lot of freedom and independence to sort of craft, the next steps, the next stage of your life. So with that, I'd be open to fielding any questions that you have.
Can I just, this is going to conclude the Google Hangouts for everyone out there. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any additional questions, our office is open throughout the summer, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You can email aifstaff@usc.edu. Send us your availability to make an appointment with an advisor. All right, have a good one. Thank you very much.
I want to add an additional resource that we offer on the statement. We have binders with copies of successful proposals in our office that you're welcome